Welcome to a Scarlet edition of Buckeye TV's Campus View. I'm your host, Cameron Moon. Thanks for joining us. We have an exciting show for you today. We will find out what's on the minds of Ohio State students as we discuss the big topics on and off campus. Let's meet our first group of students. Please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Sia Zheng and I'm majoring in communication.
Hello everyone, my name is Fan Ling. I'm a third-year student majoring in communication.
Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer. I'm a third-year arts management major.
Now, the first topic that we're going to delve into in this first segment is looking at some of the hidden gems on Ohio State's campus and around Ohio State's campus. So I'm interested to know, what is your guys' favorite hidden gem when it comes to restaurants? You know, your favorite late night eat, your favorite place to go after class, anything like that?
Well, I would say the refectory. It's a French dining and I like their steak the most and their service is perfect. So if you're looking for a fine dining, and I think this would be definitely a good choice.
I went to a sushi buffet last weekend, and it is a little bit far from our campus, but I think it's a really nice place for students to have fun there and spend their weekend.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite gems is called the Rossi. It's in the Short North. It's like an Italian-American restaurant, and I've gone there with my friends a couple of times. They have a nice happy hour, good appetizers, so I would say definitely try it out.
And obviously, as college students, the four of us will know, there's an important work-life balance that comes with being a college student. And our work-life balance, it is schoolwork and then life. So looking around the campus or maybe just off campus, what are some spots that you go to when you really need to grind for an exam, you have some late night studying you need to do? You know, where do you go in those times of need?
Well, so it's really hard to say for me because I actually lots of time preparing for our exams. I just study at home. But I would say most people would go to Thompson Library. So I don't have any hidden gems for you.
I agree. I spent most of my time reviewing exams at home, but I went to the Crime Song Cup Cafe last semester for reviewing my final exam. I think it's really a nice place for students to change a place to study and feel more relaxed during the final week.
Mm-hmm. My favorite spot right now is probably Timashev. I really like studying kind of outside their orchestra room. Hearing instrumental music can be really calming and relaxing during hard study weeks.
And I'm gonna have to agree with you on Timashev too. Just the overall vibe. It's obviously a newer building, so it's pretty nice. But if I were to have to pick a favorite spot and chime in on this a little bit, I'm gonna have to say Thompson Library's 11th floor. I don't know if you guys have ever been up there, but it almost feels this hidden, secluded kind of area of campus, and obviously you got to take the elevator all the way up to the top. So it's definitely the spot to be if you really need to get away from everything. And it's a nice little spot in Thompson. And then after that work-life balance is finished up, everybody needs to relax. Everybody needs to cool off a little bit. Either it's been a long week or you had finals one after the other. Where are you going on campus if you just want to totally get away? You want to get school off your mind. You want to get work off your mind. Where are you heading to just relax for the night?
Well, I would say the Riverside Park. I often go there when there's a sunny day. So there's very few people there, so you can pick a very quiet place and maybe call your friend with you for a picnic, something like that.
I went to a cafe called the Matcha Me. It is not on campus, but it's really near the campus and it's on High Street. Yeah, and they offer different kinds of tea and coffee, so I think it's really a good place for students to relax there.
Mm-hmm. I was also going to say Matcha Me, actually. I've been there a lot in the recent weeks. It's on the corner of Patterson and North High, so I feel like it's pretty walkable for students, and it would be a good place to go.
Now that we've covered all these different topics, we've seen our favorite place to eat, we've seen our favorite place to relax. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a hidden gem, but what is your absolute favorite place to go on campus, even if it's not a hidden gem, but where do you tend to go when the times are tough and you just want to find somewhere to go?
Well, I would say RPAC, because we know there are lots of lessons there and just lots of stuff to for you to exercise. So I would definitely choose RPAC.
I would say RPAC as well because we can do a lot of things there, like swimming or playing table tennis or tennis. So I think it's my favorite place to have a relax.
I would say like the North Rec Center probably because it's a convenient walk since I live North Campus, but also I really like the rooms that they have. So if you want to do like any Pilates or dancing with friends, stretching out, it can be really fun to do with your roommates or whoever.
We've obviously delved over a lot of places that we seem to think were maybe gatekeeping a little bit, places that people don't like to go. But what are some spots on campus that a lot of people go to that you still find that you treasure, even if it's Scott or the Union or anywhere like that? Where is a popular spot that you also find yourself attending?
Well, like I would say just like Scott, because I feel like I don't go there many times, and like lots of people say there's good food there, but like I just need to try more times.
I would say the Thompson Library because it's a little bit far from my my room and my apartment. So I know it's really beautiful and it's really good place to study, but I didn't like go there very frequently.
Probably in the fall semester, Mirror Lake. I mean, when it's good weather and you can just be in like nature on campus, it's really peaceful. But in the winter time, Pomerene Hall, since it's right there, it has a good view of Mirror Lake. I also like to go there.
Mirror Lake, not the place that it used to be, obviously, now that they drained it after the Michigan games. But it's interesting that I brought up Scott because I'm graduating this semester and I never once have gone to Scott, which I kind of feel like is a weird experience because I feel like every single person goes to Scott, but nonetheless, yeah, I've never made it. But stick around. We will talk to some more students right after this break. Welcome to another segment of the Scarlet edition of Buckeye TV's Campus View. Last time out, we heard students share their hidden gems around Ohio State's campus, and on this segment, we'll hear students talk about NIL at Ohio State and around the country. But first, let's meet those students.
I'm Sarah Sharp. I'm a third-year journalism student at Ohio State.
I'm Preston Shields. I am also a third-year journalism major here at Ohio State.
And I'm David Scovira, and I'm a fourth-year journalism student.
And guys, NIL seems to be a pretty polarizing topic as we continue to head on to the 2020s. I'm sure we all remember when it was first implemented, and it's obviously grown into something that we never even imagined it would grow into. So, just for starters, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what you think the state of college athletics is now like with NIL. It's obviously no longer an amateur sport. It feels much more professional as the days go by.
I think it's definitely interesting because you can tell that they're still trying to figure everything out. So it's kind of still the Wild West out there with the NIL. Although I do think that those athletes deserve to get some sort of compensation for all the time and effort that they put into and being able to use their name, image, and likeness as well. And you're seeing a lot of big money offers for a lot of athletes so far this year.
No, I definitely agree with college athletes are now being treated as almost free agents. Once off-season hits, Jeremiah Smith gets a $4.5 million evaluation. And a ton of different guys on the roster get north of $1 million just to go look at a program, and it's really reshaping the way that we're viewing these kids quintessentially, and instead of viewing them as amateurs, we are viewing them as pros.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super cool seeing our athletes on things like Red Bull commercials, Chipotle, Dr. Pepper, just brands like that. So yeah, the future will be definitely big for NIL.
And I think it's incredible to note the landscape at how college athletics has changed within just the past decade. I remember Braxton Miller, former Ohio State quarterback, was featured on a Honda ad outside of the stadium, and he never saw a dime for that. Now, like you mentioned, there's people in Red Bull commercials and things like that. So how much more important, Sarah, you mentioned that they do deserve this money. How important it is, do you think, that these college athletes are able to market themselves as technically amateur athletes still as the NCAA still stands before they move into the pros.
Well, I think it does kind of set that barrier between them being at the professional level and then still technically at the amateur level as college athletes, but it still gives them the opportunity to, there's a line between it, but they're still being paid money because they do put in a lot of time, they put in a lot of effort, and they're showing their entire lives pretty much to everyone out there. They're public figures pretty much as these college athletes. So just getting the money that they deserve, but also still kind of having that differentiation between when they actually make it to the pro level and when they're playing at the college level as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I feel like every one of these guys, girls, and everybody in between, they all deserve the money that they're getting, the dedication that goes into it. You can't withhold a full-time job. So Braxton Miller not getting paid for that Honda commercial, it's now absurd to see C.J. Stroud, for example, getting like a $75,000 car just for rolling a commercial, a whole line of suits back when NIL first started and gifted it to the whole team is wild. But it's a great thing to see, and I like to see guys get rewarded for putting in the 10, 15-plus years that they have dedicated to their sport.
Yeah, definitely. I like to compare NIL to like the new college football playoff format just because it's so new. So we're kind of learning on the fly, and that's where the future is going to be. But for these athletes, I mean, how can you complain? You're making money for your respective sport, for your school, and for yourself. So, yeah.
There's obviously a lot of talk over the offseason and throughout the season about Ohio State's reported $20 million roster for NIL. And, you know, us being Ohio State people, we know that technically wasn't the most in the country, but that seemed to be the main headline throughout the entire season. So do you think this is something that we're going to continue to see grow? So maybe this year is $20 million for Ohio State. Next year it's going to be $30 million. The year after that it's going to be $40 million. Until we get to a point where there's cap space when it comes to NIL and there's only so much you can give out.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting to see. And obviously, as you mentioned, a lot of people talked about the $20 million roster, even though it wasn't the highest. You had other teams like Oregon, for example, who had a higher money roster than Ohio State. But it'll be interesting to see, since it is so new in the NIL world, just how much money they're able to collect to build those rosters, especially if you have alumni who are chipping in as parts for money as well to give to these college athletes. So it'll be interesting to see how things continue to grow and move on, and if they decide that at some point there needs to be a cap to how much these rosters cost to make it a little more even between schools, or if they'll just let schools continue to grow.
Yeah, no, for sure, Cameron, like you said with the salary cap, I think it's just going to continue to grow. I just think as Jeremiah Smith, people like Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, as they continue to grow, their names are going to be what sell tickets. It's not going to be Kalen DeBoer anymore. There are very far and few between Nick Saban. So these guys are going to demand the money that is being offered to them. So until there's a cap space put onto it, I think you're just going to see, although the NIL did provide more parity, that the top four schools will eventually still float to the top because they are the ones that generate the most profit. So until a cap space is put in to where they can only allot $15 million, $10 million per school, that it's going to continue to just keep growing and growing.
I think you're definitely going to see a cap probably eventually, but right now it's just so new that they're still figuring things out, obviously. But what you hinted at, you know, Ohio State's roster with all its money, and then you got teams like Oregon and Texas. So what I think you're going to see is that these schools and where they're placed is really going to start to matter when it comes to resources.
For anybody that's familiar with antitrust law, when you look at what the MLB is, it's technically considered a monopoly where there's no other competitors. They can do pretty much whatever they want with their spending. And the NCAA kind of falls under that for me as well, where there's really no other competitors. You have divisions 1 through 3. So do you think that we're going to start to see negotiating from the players where they kind of have unions, and instead of there being a salary cap, like I mentioned, there's a salary floor where if I go to Ohio State, if I go to Texas, if I go to Alabama, wherever, I need this amount of money just to be able to step foot on your campus?
I don't know if we'll see that or not. It'll be interesting for sure, but I think that could create issues with just some schools having obviously more opportunities than others. So you might see a Texas or an Oregon or Ohio State, and people have already started talking about this, who are going to get more of those athletes and those higher scale athletes because they're able to pay more money than those smaller schools as well, which could create even more of a divide in the talent and could make it a little more skewed. So as you mentioned with the MLB, it is a little bit difficult with the monopoly. You could kind of see how the NCAA is in that same category, that same conversation. So just how they're going to combat making it so skewed between teams and who they can afford.
No, I definitely agree. I feel like NIL, there's definitely going to be floors for some of these players. I mean, we saw Jamar Chase, for COVID reasons, decide to sit out of a season just so he didn't get sick and didn't have to deal with the travel restrictions and the bans. So I don't think it's far-fetched to think guys that are seen as pro-ready prospects, the second they step on a campus say, I'm not playing for you for anything less than X amount of dollars. And I just think as these guys know their value is projected at, say, 10 million in 3 years when it keeps growing. Why would they come play for 5 when they could get hurt when they're seen as a day one ready prospect?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I think there's definitely going to be players who set a limit to how much money they want and things like that. But that's when you get into tampering. Most recently with Ohio State, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith offered to enter the transfer portal and go to other schools for X amount of money, millions and millions of dollars.
And last question here as we start to wrap up. You saw Bryce Underwood, quarterback commit at Michigan, receive reportedly $20 million just to come to Michigan. He hasn't even played a snap yet. So do you think that this is eventually going to turn into a runaway train where you're bidding on guys and you're trying to throw out the highest contract possible, and he comes onto campus, not to say Bryce is going to be a dud, but you have these guys that just don't ever pan out, and now you owe him contractually $20 million?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be something that's difficult because, as you mentioned, didn't even play, but you're putting all this money toward that specific athlete. So it seems like it almost is a bidding war where you're kind of betting on somebody and just hoping that it works out for your school or your program. So I don't know if that's something in the future that they can work on to try to negotiate, but I guess if you give somebody a contract, is that what you have to, like, are you guaranteed to have to give them that? Or like if you could start to change it around to be more like performance-based as well too. So a lot of open area on what they can do with NIL for sure.
You said a runaway train, and I think we're already living in the runaway train. I mean, 4 years ago we saw Quinn Ewers get $1 million from Ohio State as the number 1 rated prospect, and now we're 5 years removed and we see $20 million for the same number 1 prospect, and I think the runaway train's already on the tracks.
I definitely agree with the both of you. I'm just interested to see what the standard's going to be, what X amount of money is going to be basically what we see for the next couple of years here.
Stick around, we will talk to some students right after this break. Hi everybody and welcome back to another edition of a Scarlet show of Buckeye TV's Campus View. I've been your host, Cameron Moon. So far we've heard from students talk about campus's best hidden gems, NIL, and for this third and final segment we'll hear students talk about the dangers and implications of artificial intelligence, also known as AI. But first, let's meet those students.
I'm Darian Ippolito, and I'm a theater major.
I'm Varsha Bala, and I'm a third-year strategic communications major.
I'm Millie Stanhope. I'm a second-year film studies major.
So now, all of us have been through college a little bit. We've seen our way around a syllabus or two, and you know now that if you scroll down far enough in the syllabus or if you look through far enough, there's always a little section about AI, and either if you can use it for the class or if you can't use it. So I'm interested to know if you have been able to use it for a class, and did you use it, or you haven't been able to use it for a class, and why were you not allowed to use it?
So most of my classes, I've not been able to use it, but there was this one class I took where they kind of like a little bit encouraged the use of AI. They were like, use AI to assist you. Don't have it write your papers per se, but have it assist you. And I did a little bit of that, but like AI, it doesn't help me in my process of writing. So I kind of like struggled using AI to help me personally.
For most of my classes, we weren't allowed to use AI, but this semester I did have one where they allowed to have us use AI to make like an outline for our writing, but we weren't allowed to have it be like used for writing specifically. But personally, I chose not to use it because it just didn't help me.
Yeah, I think I've had kind of similar experiences where like most of my classes it's not allowed, but I have had a few classes where the professor has said we can use it in certain ways, but for the most part to kind of steer clear of it.
Darren, you mentioned how you kind of see AI as a hindrance to your writing, methods and trying to figure out things. So now that we understand how college professors view it, and most of the time it's negative, but I also have had some people where they see it as a tool. How do you personally feel about AI, and do you think it's a necessary tool, or do you see it more as an evil?
So with AI, I think it definitely does help some people. Like some people I feel like maybe aren't the most academically gifted or like are not able to like study well, and that it might help them with like, you know, getting ideas for a paper, or, you know, help them with understand work better, like if they don't have a great teacher. But personally, I've always been able to like do things on my own. Like I like to classify myself as smart. So it's like, to me, it's like just, because I can figure out what I want to write about, and I can write about it for the most part. Sometimes like I might struggle here or there, but it just holds me back, I feel.
And like personally, like I choose not to use AI because like I feel like it will make me get over dependent on it, and that's not something I want to rely on. Because I do remember like during exam season last semester, ChatGPT actually crashed in the middle of the night for about a couple hours because there was a huge influx of college students getting on and using it for their final exams, and many of them went online the next day to complain about how some of them actually failed their exams because ChatGPT crashed, and that's kind of been a bit concerning as like with AI like gaining more popularity, and how like college students and many people are in general just becoming much more heavily dependent on it rather than like doing the work themselves.
Yeah, I think AI can be used beneficially kind of in medical settings and for medical research, but in an educational setting, I think it's a lot trickier because we have this kind of urgency culture where people want to know things and they want to know them now. And so when you use AI, I think you kind of become dependent on using that first answer it gives you, and that can be really harmful.
And I don't mean to get too philosophical with this, but you brought up a good point about how people are becoming over-reliant on AI, and we need these kind of things. So for the three of you, do you fear that we're going to eventually reach a time where we become so dependent on AI and ideas and artwork and, you know, just the things that humanity is so used to creating, we just rely on computers to make it, and everything that, you know, kind of relies on art just comes from something that, you know, doesn't have that human, you know, nature to it?
Well, I personally think that there are definitely going to be people like that, but I always feel like there's always going to be someone out there who is like, I want to make art, I want to do this, and they're going to pursue it. And will it maybe get lost in AI as time goes on? Possibly, but I like believing that humanity will always rise through, and the human works are what's going to stand out, and not something made by AI or other.
Yeah. Adding on to what you were saying, when it comes to AI art and AI writing, you can like usually tell, because like for me, like whenever I see AI art or AI writing, it just feels soulless. Like a robot cannot like create art with a soul. That's something that only a human can put into it.
I definitely agree with that. Art is so political and personal, and I don't think that AI can recreate that. No matter how good it gets at producing images, there's nothing behind it.
And we've seen AI used as a tool to kind of replace jobs. I know there was a little bit of a time where newspapers were relying on AI to write, you know, recaps of games that were happening around the area, and you could really tell, like you mentioned, there wasn't a soul to that. So do you guys personally feel like AI is a pretty prevalent danger when it comes to taking away jobs that a person could do?
I would say at this very moment, no. But I would say in the future, maybe even in the near future, I could totally see it taking over some jobs. I personally don't like that because I feel like there's a lot of room for error in AI, and with humans, like, you know, they have multiple layers. Like, you know, you'll have like the person who writes a story, and then you have a fact checker and stuff like that. And AI doesn't have that. And I feel like if it starts taking over jobs, it's just going to lead to a lot more false information out there.
Yes, and also like ChatGPT is not always up to date. I believe like a couple years ago, it only had data up until 2022. And this year, I'm not sure how far up it is, but it's definitely not up to the most recent year. So if there is like news stories going out that is being written with AI, it's not going to be accurate.
Yeah, I think there's a push to replace jobs with AI, but I don't think it's completely possible, at least not yet. There was, during the recent writers' strike, a lot of places tried to use AI to write scripts, and even like, I think we saw in December, Coca-Cola produced an ad that was completely AI, and just the response to that stuff isn't good.
That has been a Scarlet edition of Buckeye TV's Campus View. We've heard from students talk about campus's hidden gems, NIL, and in this most recent segment, the dangers and implications of AI. That's all the time we have for today's show. Thanks for joining us. I've been Cameron Moon, and stay tuned for more Buckeye TV.